Good morning, dear students. How are you all? I hope you all are fine. This is Nilesh Patil sir and recording this lecture for my dear students of 10th SSC. Dear students, last week we started studying the third lesson of geography, the physiography and drainage of India and Brazil. We have already discussed the physiography of India. And in this session, I'm going to talk about the physiography of Brazil. So let's get started. Dear students, as I said, we are going to talk about physiography and drainage of India and Brazil. Before I start talking about the physiography of Brazil, I would like to remind you the physical divisions of India. You might remember there are 5 important physical divisions that we find in India. The North Indian mountains, which are also known as Himalayan mountains, the North Indian plains, the Indian plateaus, the Western Ghats and the coastal plain, and the Indian islands, which are further divided as islands in the Arabian Sea, islands in the Bay of Bengal. Now let's talk about the physiography of Brazil. Dear students, now let's talk about the physiography of Brazil. Here we can see the physical map of Brazil. Large part of this country is occupied by highlands, which you can see is marked with yellow color on this map. Apart from highlands, another important physical unit is the Brazilian plains. There are mainly the plains in Amazon River Basin and Paraguay-Paraná River Basin in the south. Dear children, there are no high and long extending mountains in the country. Even the plains are not very wide. If you observe the index given on this slide, you will understand that the highest part in Brazil, that lies here in the southern part, the highest highlands, highest peaks are as high as 1000 meters. And if you compare the Himalayan mountains, you know that the highest peaks in Himalaya are more than 8000 meters. So we understand that there are no high mountains in this country. Now let's talk about some other physical divisions of Brazil. Dear students, we know that there are 5 physical divisions in Brazil. Of these, I have introduced 2 divisions to you already, the highlands and the plains. Apart from these 2 very important divisions, we see the Great Escarpment, the coastal region, and the island groups form part of the physiography of Brazil. If you people remember, I talked about the escarpment. An escarpment is a very steep wall-like mountain. I hope you remember this thing. Now children, let's get to know about these divisions in detail. Dear children, you can see on this map, which is a satellite image, and it's not the map of Brazil. I must clear, this is the map in which you can see the South American continent. But as we know, a large part of South America is occupied by Brazil. In this map, we can clearly see the Brazilian highlands. A large part of Brazil is occupied by these highlands. These highlands are described as Brazilian highlands or Brazilian shield or Brazilian plateaus. These lie in the southern part of this South American continent. Dear children, now let's talk about another very important physical unit, that is Guiana Highlands. So apart from Brazilian highlands that we discussed, there is one more highland located in Brazil, that is Guiana Highland. Dear children, let me tell you, a large part of Guiana Highlands extends in the neighboring country Venezuela. But this does not mean that this physical unit is not important. Dear children, these highlands cover the states of Roraima, Para and Amapá in the north. Dear children, these highlands are the lower part of these Guiana highlands, which mainly extend in Venezuela. The lower part of these highlands extends in Brazil. Dear children, the highest peak of Brazil, which you can see here on the map, Neblina Peak, which is 3014 meters high, is located in these highlands. Now let's take a look at the Neblina Peak. I hope you people have observed here the Neblina Peak on this map. You can see it lies on the border of Brazil and Venezuela in these Guiana highlands in the northern part of Brazil. Let's take a look at this high peak, the highest peak in Brazil. Please do not forget this name, Pico de Neblina. Its height is 3014 meters. Dear children, now let's talk about the Brazilian highlands in detail. We can see here in the index the height of Brazilian highlands is between 500 to 1000 meters. Dear children, in the northern part of these highlands, the slopes are not very steep. So the rivers that originate in this area flow towards the north. They form the basin of river Amazon. In this area, we come across a large number of rapids and waterfalls. Now there must be a question in your mind, what rapids are? Dear children, a rapid is a part of the river where water flows very swiftly due to steep slope. Now dear children, let me tell you, when I say the slope of Brazilian highland towards the north is not very steep, I mean comparatively. If you compare it with the slopes of these highlands towards the south, you will find that these slopes are not very steep. Dear children, we can see a large number of tributaries of Amazon flow through this region. Now let's move ahead and talk about the southern part of Brazil. Dear children, to the south and to the east of this country, here in the area of highlands, you can see an escarpment. Now there must be a question in your mind, what an escarpment is. I have already explained and I am going to show you a picture. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you have not understood what an escarpment is, let's see a picture and try to understand it. Dear children, now let's talk about the southern slopes of Brazil. There are three major rivers that originate in this area: Uruguay, Paraguay, and Parana, which you can see in this map clearly. Children, these rivers flow towards the south of these highlands and enter Argentina. Children, the slopes towards the east of these highlands are steep and they appear in the form of an escarpment. Now let's try to see an escarpment. Dear children, you can see the picture of an escarpment, and I hope it will give you a clear understanding of this physical unit. Dear children, now let's talk about the escarpment in detail. It occupies a very small area of Brazil, mainly from the city of Sao Paulo and Porto Alegre. Dear children, though it occupies a very small area, it is an important physical unit because it has great impact on the climate of Brazil. Dear children, the altitude or the height of escarpment is 790 meters, and in some areas this height decreases gradually. Dear children, the winds that carry moisture with them, which are known as the southeast trade winds, are arrested by this escarpment, and it gives rainfall in the area of coastline. The region to the north of this escarpment is prone to drought, that is lack of rain. Thus, it is known as drought quadrilateral. Now, since this question is asked in exam for map filling, we will try to see the drought quadrilateral on a map. Dear children, you can see the dot quadrilateral shown here. A question on map filling will definitely be asked, and this is an important question. You see, in the northern part of Brazil, to the north of escarpment, which lies here, lies the drought quadrilateral. And you can see here the northeast trade winds. In both these areas, these trade winds are arrested, these are stopped by the escarpment, about which I talked just before few minutes. Having talked about the highlands, now let's talk about the coast. You can see here the Brazilian coast can be divided in two parts: North Atlantic coast and South Atlantic coast. Let's talk about the North Atlantic coast first. Children, this coast extends from the state of Amapá to Rio de Grande Norte in the east. From here, the coast extends southward. You can see here. Children, the northern coast is characterized by mouths of rivers. That simply means a number of rivers empty their waters in this coast. Like see, Amazon River, apart from that, the tributaries of Amazon. These all rivers empty their waters in the North Atlantic coast. Children, this Marajo Island and Sao Marcos Bays lie between the states of Amapá and Para. We can see these islands lie between the rivers Amazon and Tocantins. You can see it's quite a large island, and in the satellite image looks quite beautiful. Having discussed the north coast, dear children, now let's talk about the coast to the south and to the east. Dear children, this eastern coast receives large number of small rivers. One major river that empties its water in the eastern coast is São Francisco. Dear children, the Brazilian coast is characterized by a number of beaches and sand dunes. You see, therefore it is a major attraction of tourists. We know that Brazilian coast is protected in some areas by coral reefs and atoll islands. Now let's try to see the pictures to get a clear idea of what coral reefs and atoll islands are. Dear children, atolls are an island in the circular shape. You can see here in the central part of these islands, one can see lakes. And in the outer part, you can see deposition. These islands are mostly formed due to deposition of coral rocks. Dear children, we can see a picture of coral reef. You will get a clear idea of what coral reef is, coral island is. Dear children, corals are invertebrates. You see, these turn into rocks and many times cause the formation of islands. Dear children, now let's talk about the next physical unit of Brazil, which is the plains. We can see the plains lie mainly in two areas, the Amazon River Basin and the Paraguay-Parana River Basin. You see, except these, there are no long, extending, wide plains in Brazil. Now let's talk about these plains in some detail. Dear children, the Amazon plain lies between these two very important highlands, the Guiana highlands and the Brazilian highland. Dear children, these plains have been formed due to deposition by river Amazon and its basins. This plain slopes eastward. The Amazon basin is quite wide in the west and it narrows eastward. Dear children, the width of these plains increases as one approaches the Atlantic Ocean. These plains are mostly forested. This area is occupied by forests, dense forests, Amazon forests. We all know about these forests. These are dense tropical forests. Dear children, now let's talk about the Paraguay-Parana source region. This is very important plain in Brazil. Children, the source region of the source region of Paraguay slopes towards the south, whereas the source region of Parana slopes towards the southwest. which we are going to see in a picture. Children, there's a very important wetland located in this area, which is also the World Heritage. Pantanal is the wetland that lies towards the southwest part of highlands. Dear children, it is a region of swamps and marshes in the northwestern Mato Grosso do Sul in Brazil. It is a name of a state. It also extends in Argentina. Dear children, have a look at Pantanal wetlands. I said it is an area declared as World Heritage. It is simply beautiful. The Pantanal wetlands, as I said, they lie in the Paraguay-Parana basin. Having talked about the coastal plains and the plains of Amazon and Paraguay-Parana, children, let's talk about the islands, which is a very important physical unit in Brazil. Dear children, we can classify Brazilian islands as coastal islands and marine islands. As the name suggests, the coastal islands are in the vicinity of the coast, whereas the marine islands are away from the coast. The coastal islands get formed due to deposition, which you can see in the first picture. Dear children, marine islands were a part of mainland. They are more than 300 kilometers away from the mainland in Atlantic Ocean, which you can see in the second picture. Dear children, these islands are mostly rocky and they are the top part of submerged mountains. Dear children, the islands near the south coast, South Atlantic Ocean, the coast of South Atlantic Ocean are mainly in the form of coral reefs and atolls, which we saw in one picture. This island, which is shown in the second picture, can also be called a coral island because you can see in the central part of these islands there are lakes. I hope you understood these 5 physical divisions of Brazil. If any queries or doubts, feel free to ask. Thank you.